I want to tell you a love story today, but it's not really about my husband, Hugh, although he's in it. It's about the woman I had to become before I could recognize him. You see, the thing that nobody tells you when you're dating later in life is that finding the right person isn't just about finding the right person. It's about being ready to see them when they actually show up. You see, I wasn't always ready. So I'm going to tell you exactly what changed. After my second divorce, I took a long, hard look at myself, and I really didn't like some of the things that I was seeing. Over the years, my self love has been up and down. There were times in my life that the love that I had for myself was super high, like when I loved myself enough to lose over 125 pounds and get healthier. And then there were times that it was pretty low, like after I gained some of the weight back, or after both of my divorces, or raising an 11-month-old on my own, or after my second divorce, being single again, wondering why I was divorced twice by the time I was 40. So many times. But here's what I learned after my second divorce, and it was reinforced many, many years later after the guy that I dated for 3 years ghosted me. I had a type, and my type wasn't a physical thing, it was a role. You see, I was a fixer. Both of my marriages were to men whose lives I thought I could make better. And I told myself that was love, that taking care of someone, making things easier for them, being the one who held everything together, that was what love really looked like. What it actually was, though, since I'm being completely transparent here, was me making myself indispensable so that they wouldn't leave me. After my second divorce, I started doing some real work on myself. Therapy, I should say, I went back to therapy, an amazing personal development seminar that completely changed my life, so much so that I volunteered and moved up the ranks to become a training coordinator because I loved the work. I loved seeing the light bulbs in the students when they finally got it, when they finally understood why they did the things that they did, and then put those changes into action and made their lives and relationships better. And of course, also because it helped me continue my own personal growth journey. It was the kind of work that's uncomfortable and slow and necessary. And one of those seminars taught me some things that shifted everything. It taught me how to love myself no matter what was going on in my life, and how to be a leader in my own life instead of being a victim or a martyr or a bitch. Not my normal go to, the bitchy part, but I can't say I've never been that. I had been living my life blaming other people, like my parents, for some things, and acting like things happened to me, like I didn't have a choice, like love was something you survived rather than something you chose. That work changed me, and eventually it changed who I was able to choose. While I was dating and doing that work at the same time, I started to see the patterns more clearly. There was a guy who lied to me. I dated for 2 years, and he lied repeatedly. And I stayed way longer than I should have because subconsciously kept thinking I could figure out why and fix it. When I think about it, that's a pretty big ego, right? Then there was another guy, retired military, liked control, didn't like to talk about his emotions, didn't have good relationships with his family. I invited to him to one of my seminars that I was staffing, something that I was super passionate about, right? Something that had genuinely changed my life, super important to me. And he wouldn't even consider attending. I loved going to musicals. He wouldn't even go. But I showed up and did everything he loved. I want to be really clear. I am not telling you those stories to be unkind to those guys. The truth is, they were good guys and they had some really good qualities, or I wouldn't have dated them in the first place. I had a good time dating them, and I learned a lot about myself dating them. I'm telling you all this because I was choosing them and choosing to stay as long as I did. Something in me kept gravitating towards men who needed managing, or men who were closed off, or men who made me work for the relationship. That was my pattern. And until I looked at it, honestly looked at it, I couldn't break it. And then there was Hugh. From the beginning, he was different in ways I didn't totally understand yet. He was open, genuinely open in a way that didn't make me suspicious. He talked about his feelings without being asked. He was curious about mine. He had done his own work, starting 30 years before we even met when he had quit drinking. And anyone who has done that kind of work knows it doesn't just change your relationship with alcohol, it changes your relationship with yourself. He had spent decades looking honestly at who he was and doing something about the behaviors that he didn't like about himself and that didn't serve him. Here's an example. Early on, like a week after we started talking, or a week after we met on one of the apps, he told me he was going to call me at a certain time, and he was late. When he called, he didn't make an excuse. He didn't make, he didn't try to explain it away. He just owned it and apologized. What a concept. Simply and directly. That was different. That mattered. But the moment I really knew that he was different, the moment I really knew was on a late night phone call. We did a lot of those because he worked second shift and I was a night owl, remnants of probably my 12 years in the restaurant business. I asked him a question, probably because I was half asleep, where he had been all my life. I was tired, half awake, half kidding, and he answered, growing. And I was like, what? Because in all my years of dating, no man had ever said anything like that to me. Let's be real. Most guys would have laughed it off or said, I don't know. But Hugh said, growing, without hesitation, like it was the most natural thing in the world. No joke. I remember thinking to myself, that was interesting. This guy, definitely different. I saw a few friends the following night, and they asked me why I looked so happy. So I told them what they said, and they were all shocked and said the same thing. Here's the part I want to be honest about, as if I've been anything but since I started this channel 4 months ago. My life is an open book. But I think it's the part that will resonate the most with you, and it's the most important part. I didn't almost walk away from you. I didn't second guess it. I didn't self sabotage or pull back or create any drama because things were going too well. And that was new for me. The work I had done, the therapy, the seminar, years of looking honestly at my patterns had finally brought me to a place where I loved myself enough to recognize a good man when he was standing right in front of me and to just be there, be present fully, without shrinking, without testing, without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like I mentioned earlier, those seminars taught me how to be a leader in my own life instead of being a victim or martyr or a bitch. And that shift from someone that things happen to someone who took radical responsibility and made conscious choices, that's what changed everything. I wasn't looking for someone to fix or to complete me anymore. I didn't need to do that anymore because I knew who I was. I knew my value. And so when Hugh showed up, open, accountable, doing his own work, saying growing on a late night phone call, I could see him clearly, not through the lens of old wounds and old patterns, just clearly. That's what loving yourself actually does. It doesn't just make you feel better, it makes you able to recognize what's real when it finally arrives. And here's what I know now that I didn't know then. What I was looking for had a name. I just didn't know it at the time. It's called emotional availability. And it's the foundation of every green flag that we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks. Emotional availability is what lets a man hold you while you cry without trying to fix it. It's what makes him say growing when you ask where he's been. It's what makes him own a mistake instead of defending it. It's what makes him curious about your inner life, not just the things that you're doing. I spent years dating men who weren't emotionally available, and I didn't have the name for it. I just knew something was always slightly off and missing. Not always at the beginning, but eventually. It was something I couldn't put my finger on. Just this feeling lying underneath. It felt off, right? That's why I want to do a series of videos about this so that you have the language. So when emotional availability shows up right in front of you, you can recognize it and you don't talk yourself out of it because it's not a feeling you're used to, because it feels too calm, too easy, too good to be true. Hugh has a book coming out really soon about his own journey, 30 years of sobriety, the inner work, all of it. And I'll share more about that when it's out because his story is really worth hearing. But I'll tell you this, I'm a better woman and he is a better man because we both did the work before we found each other. As a matter of fact, we both say that if we had met even 6 months earlier before we did, it's possible it might not have worked because we weren't ready. It was great timing though. Like I said, this week kicks off something I have been really looking forward to for a long time, talking about green flags. For the next 8 weeks, we're going to talk about what a genuinely good man really looks like, what he does consistently, how he shows up, what real partnership feels like from the inside. So when I started right where it matters, I started right where it matters most. Emotional availability, because that's the foundation everything else is built on. We spent over a month talking about lots and lots of red flags, learning what to walk away from. So now we're talking about what to walk towards. Your best relationship starts with you being ready to recognize it. Not ready as in perfect, not ready as in finished, because working on yourself is a journey and we're never finished. It's an ongoing process. But ready as in you know your own value. You've done enough work to trust your gut. You love yourself enough to wait for someone who shows up the way you deserve. I am not just your coach. I am your proof. I found real love in my 50s, after 2 divorces, after years of dating, after all of it, because I finally did the work to become a woman who could recognize a good man when he was standing right in front of me. And you can too. And you are absolutely worth waiting for. So if this video helped you, please subscribe. Every week on this channel, we talk about real love, real growth, and what it actually takes to create the relationship you deserve. Because your best relationship starts with you. See you next week.